All right, welcome to our fourth episode of The Brief. We're here with Marcus.
Marcus!
Marcus and I
It's good to be here.
Marcus and I have known each other for quite a while. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you do.
Yeah, as Garrett said, my name's Marcus Bagalà. I'm a composer primarily, but I also do sound design and mixing. I work for a company called Gimlet Media, and we make podcasts. And I also score like documentary films and other video types of content.
On this episode, our goal is to just talk about the process of working with a composer, how to incorporate music, how to give feedback, creative direction, and we could talk a little bit about custom music versus stock music versus licensing popular tracks. So I think to start off, maybe you can give us some tips on how to start the process of creatively working with a composer.
I like to emphasize the idea that it's like really good to get a composer involved early in the process. It gives the composers time to sort of like work and think about the music while you're thinking about other things. Let them know when stuff's coming. Let them know what the project is like way earlier than you would think of. And that allows you to have a much sort of more seamless collaboration.
On the subject of not having much time, let's talk about what the benefits are of using custom music, which takes a little bit more time, versus using stock music, which is, of course, is pre-made, versus bonus licensing a track of popular music.
The thing to think about, I think time is definitely a factor when you're talking about like your sort of overall music direction. You're trying to sort of solve like what's the right direction to go, right? So like, yes, custom composition takes a little more time, a little more leeway. You need more runway to kind of get the project going. Whereas like stock music, it is faster in that when you find the piece that works, it's good to go. But it can also take a while because sometimes it's hard to find the right track.
That is,
and I think sometimes,
100%.
yeah,
Combing through, audio jungle.
Yep. We all know the libraries that we use, and like, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard to find the right thing, and that can turn into a really frustrating process. So it's sort of like good to so if you're thinking like, well, this is a project that makes sense for stock music, which I'll talk about in a second. Like, don't like underestimate how long it can take to like find the right pieces, and especially if it's like last year, I music supervised and directed a documentary that was using stock music, and like the process of sort of how long that took to just put stock music in this film, so the feature documentary. It was like the same amount of time that it would have taken to just like write music for it. And then, yeah, so we talk about licensing music. I think the thing with licensing music is just like, yes, it's expensive. It's always going to be more expensive than the other two options. As a composer, or even if you're trying to do this with library music, it is the most frustrating thing you can possibly do to have someone hand you a popular song and say, hey, can you do this but not this? And because it's like you're setting someone up for the impossible task. Either trying to find a library track that has a vibe is really hard. It's awful. Or to even just trying to recreate the vibe of someone else's song. Like, it doesn't really feel good creatively. And then it's also just hard because the person wants the song, right? If you're like a creative director on a project and you're saying, hey, I want this song, you want the song.
So in those instances, Marcus, where a client might say, we love Kygo's track, or we love Gaga's track, or we love this, what does a production company do at that moment?
I think, the best thing to do in that moment would be to engage the services of a music supervisor. And a music supervisor, if you don't know, is someone who basically like handles that like licensing part of it. They can go to the label and they can say, hey, I'm working on this project. we'd really love to use this song. Here's all the details for it. What kind of quote can you give us? And the sort of importance of having a music supervisor is they already have all of the contacts that they would need to actually go after these things. There's a lot of silent stakeholders. It's not as simple as just like reaching out to the Rolling Stones and getting their song. It's like, you have to talk to their label. You have to figure out like who the, record producer who suggested one lyric change was. And like, cause all of those people need to get paid. So that's a really complicated process. And when you engage with the services of a music supervisor, you get someone who like their entire life is like figuring out all of those little things and all those little details, and then trying to make you the best deal possible, which is another deal where it's like, there have been times when I've been working on projects with a music supervisor and like, I'll just, ask whatever, like for a quote, even from libraries sometimes, which is an interesting thing. But I'll go out for a quote, and then the music supervisor will do their thing, and the quote that comes back to them is like way lower than what the quote that I got back. So it's just because they know that system and they know the right things to ask and the right people to talk to.
But let's just say, for instance, we want to get the vibe of a song, but we want an original composition. What is the best way to approach you as a composer? So I know that you mentioned it's not your favorite task to be given a track and say, please, like, can we match this? So we want this track, but do it different. What if there's like, well, this is the essence of the energy that we would like to get?
It's to say, well, we can't license whoever, but there's this other guy who makes similar music, but he's not as big of a star. So maybe we could actually engage him to like compose for us. And then like you can get something from somebody who knows that world and knows that vibe and is like actively living in it to sort of like do the thing. Because it's like, I think, there's a lot to be said about like the versatility of people who like make it their deal to like write music for media. Like I know, like I have a lot of versatility as a composer. I can write in a lot of different styles, but I also know that there's some styles that I cannot write in. And if I try to, no one's going to be happy, So it's like, sometimes it's about finding the right person to do the job.
So find a connected composer just like you, and always,
exactly.
And just like you're always the first call, basically.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's first of all, thank you. I love when you guys call. But secondly, it's like, I would say like, I have a lot of producer friends, and that makes it easier. So when these things do come up, it's like either I can, push you guys towards someone, or I can do it. But it's also like, most of us are like that, like if you're working, you've undoubtedly like, you have, a pool of people that, you can kind of recommend people to, and you just start to know who's around a little bit.
What is the best way to give feedback to make sure that the piece makes everybody happy?
I mean, I personally really like when people talk to me about emotions. Like, obviously for not everything needs that level of sort of like minutia, but it is really nice if, I send something to filmmakers or producers or whoever, and they're like, yeah, like this is not feeling enough of, this doesn't feel sad enough, or like, because those are, I think it's like, that's like the universal kind of language of like, we all can talk about emotions and we all sort of like know them. When it comes to like making media, it's like, yeah, I don't necessarily know like how Final Cut works, like, but I know that like whatever you just sent me like feels sad, or feels exciting, whatever, right? So like we can all like converse on that level. So I think it's nice when people, or like when we can sort of like just use like emotions to sort of describe like what is or isn't happening.
I say this a lot. Like, I say nothing is subjective. Like, everything is objective, and sometimes I get in trouble for it. But I an awesome exercise in college. It was a music theory class or something like that. And we charted TV theme songs from consonant to dissonant, and
cool.
like happy to sad. And the theme of each show directly matched the consonant versus dissonant. Like you could tell what the show is about by how consonant or dissonant the song was. But it's funny to think about emotions, and we think of emotions as being like this nebulous thing, but like you can chart them like triumphant or sad or happy. Like you can chart where a music track hits on like a matrix.
We should talk a little bit about Marcus's current work. What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? The most recent thing I did, I have actually two projects. One is a documentary film that was done with Patagonia about like oil pipelines in West Texas. And I wrote the music for it, and I also sound designed that film. And the other thing that I have that just came out, actually the final episode published on Tuesday is a podcast from Gimlet called Conviction American Panic. Gimlet has a studio, actually, like we have a recording studio in our office. So we like brought in a string quartet.
Lucky.
And it's, I mean, you know, big old podcast company with lots of resources, but we actually got to do a lot. I think this was like one of the most resources that we've put into music ever before. It was a really, really cool, really, you know, exciting process that we all kind of like went through. And we hired an orchestrator. Like, this was the first time I think a podcast has ever hired an orchestrator for their score. So that's on Spotify now. It's only on Spotify. But Spotify is free. You can download the app for free and you can listen to podcasts. So I would highly recommend it. It's a trip. Like every episode, there's like a bomb drop at the end of each episode.
So Marcus, how do people get in contact with you if they want to work with you?
I have a website. It's marcusbagalà.com, and there's a contact form on there that you can fill out and hit me up, and I'll probably get right back to you. Especially now that I'm home chilling all the time. You know, I still have quite a bit of Gimlet stuff going on, but you know, in all the time, you know, that I don't, I'm like, okay, like, what do I do? So.
And that's for specifically like narrative, doc, or
I definitely I think I sort of specialize in like doc content. That's probably like where I do most of my work. But yeah, you know, I like to branch out as well. So
thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Brief.